When moving to a new country, getting a job and settling in your career is often one of the biggest challenges and concerns faced. These difficulties are a reality for many, but with a good plan and approach can be overcome. Welcome to the CanMove Podcast, where it's all about building a community around the achievement of success through immigration. I'm your host, Paul, and thanks for joining us on this episode. In this episode, we discuss achieving career success as a new immigrant and how to navigate this very important aspect of transition to Canada. Today, I am joined by yet another great friend of mine, Nadisha Berry, who holds designations as a certified HR professional and senior professional in HR International with years of experience and expertise in the field. She's also a Canadian immigrant who has navigated her own career transition and helped many others to do the same. Hey Nadisha, how are you doing today?
Hey Paul, I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thank you for joining the podcast, and I am so excited for you to share some knowledge and wisdom with the audience.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to sharing as well.
Awesome. So let's jump right into the first question, right? So people want to have the least amount of disruption in their life when transitioning to Canada. That's normal, right? But is doing that and getting a job before coming here really something that can be expected?
Well, that's actually a very great question, especially since there have been so many floating ads highlighting that Canada needs workers. Securing a job before coming to Canada, it's possible. However, it's not as easy as it appears to be, where you just apply for a job, do an interview, and receive a job offer, and then voila, you move to Canada. There are definitely opportunities where persons immigrating to Canada can have arranged employment, but the more unique or in demand the skill sets, then the greater the probability. In most cases, Paul, as you know, to hire a foreign national, an organization would have to have a positive labor market impact assessment to support a job offer, right? So that just allows the employer to hire a foreign national after proving that it took all the necessary steps to hire a Canadian or a permanent resident, but they were unable to do so. There are exceptions to this, but it depends on several factors. So as an example, persons moving to Canada under the new caregiver pilot programs as either a home support worker or a home child care provider, they don't need an LMIA, but they definitely need a job offer before they transition. So I think the majority of persons who transition to Canada, particularly through express entry, they didn't secure employment prior to moving to Canada, and that includes myself. So based on my experience, particularly having worked in an organization that serves immigrants and newcomers, it's a reasonable expectation to prepare for at least a 1 to 3 month period of unemployment upon moving to Canada.
For sure. No, that is amazing. So when you're absolutely right. So when I was coming, so I had gotten my PR and was supposed to come here, and I was frantically applying to job after job after job, and nothing really connected. My wife, she was doing the same and actually got a contact through a recruiter and was actually arranging or had arranged employment for when she landed. But a job offer didn't reach directly, but everything was being set up for when we actually got here. But as you mentioned, it is particularly difficult to secure that before coming here. And I personally advise people to be prepared to come here, set up shop, and then, hit the ground running in trying to secure a job. I think that's definitely the most reasonable approach to take, for sure.
Definitely.
Awesome. So let me ask you, so in the grand scheme of getting a job, I'm sure all of us new immigrants have heard Canadian experience. You can't get a job, or it will be difficult to get a job without Canadian experience. But of course, being new to the country, we don't have Canadian experience. Is this notion true? And if so, how can new immigrants push past that to secure a job?
Oh, wow. Here we go. The glorified Canadian experience. I believe that many immigrants who try to enter the Canadian work environment, especially in professional or high-skilled jobs, they have faced this barrier. So to this day, I have yet to receive a proper definition or breakdown of what constitutes Canadian experience, except for the fact that you have worked in Canada. I do know that for some, the perception is held that it's risky to hire newcomers because they may not be able to adapt quickly to the Canadian work environment, and or that it's just too great an investment to get them up to speed. So I would definitively say that it is one of those hurdles that most newcomers, if not all newcomers, will have to be prepared to jump. Personally, I've encountered that. And I've had a recruiter tell me point blank that I'm a perfect candidate for the role, but their boss would never hire me because I have no Canadian experience. I think as a catch-all, one of the all-encompassing way to get around that is preparation. Including, conducting research, networking, being able to demonstrate your transferable skills. It's having the ability to highlight your unique value proposition, to show how you can either solve a problem that a company is having, or how you can implement, cost saving or revenue generating initiatives. I would also recommend, using the services of a professional, either a recruiter or a career coach, to help with, crafting and working a practical transition strategy, including job search and networking techniques, interview preparation, because it's quite different here, So there are also organizations such as the one that I have the privilege of working for, Skills for Change, which provides free in-person and online training, job readiness workshop, and employment counseling to help prepare newcomers, and immigrants for the Canadian work environment. Additionally, I think volunteering is a brilliant way to gain Canadian experience and to help overcome that barrier.
Absolutely. And I think that with that response is a perfect segue into this next question. So what is your opinion on getting the shoe in, right? So we know that I, for myself, I somewhat give this kind of advice, just based on my own experience, that it's important to not necessarily stick to or hold too close to your heart getting that ideal perfect job, but having the strategy and approach to actually get the shoe in the door first, to get that Canadian experience, and then transition into where you want, even if it's a lower level job or maybe even a job outside of your industry. What would you say about that?
Well, I think that's a great question, Paul, and it's a struggle that many immigrants face, especially high-skilled immigrants. So I think the approach to that is individual, and it would have to take into consideration, what is my job search or overall career goal as I transition. And I think the situation is dependent on everybody's unique situation. So I don't say I have a one-size-fits-all response. There are many factors that would have to be considered, such as if the field or the occupation is regulated in the province or the territory, and if there's a required certification or license that the person needs to practice. If that is the case, then how does one initiate that process? How long will that process take? Will they need to go back to school? Will they need to have Canadian experience in order to be able to practice in that field? So as an example, like in Ontario, teachers, electricians, engineers, doctors, nurses, plumbers, those are all regulated professions. So if a newcomer comes to Canada, they may have to take a lower paying job in order to meet their basic needs, to fund the education that they need to get that designation or get that certification, or they may need to get the Canadian experience. So it may require that they take a lower level job. So for example, if there's an engineer that moves to Ontario, having completed all the courses and done the written exams that are required, they have to work 1 year as an engineer in training under a certified engineer in Canada, which is a lower paying job for them, before they can become a licensed engineer, so it really depends on the situation. I'd say that whether the profession is regulated or not, again, it's a matter of evaluating your individual situation and your overarching career plan. To gain experience, some people may take a lower paid job in their field just to get a foot in, to cater to their basic needs and to make ends meet. Someone else may take a survival job. So for example, if there's a couple that recently moved to Canada with a child, let's say the wife is pursuing postgraduate studies as an international student and the husband has an open work permit. Now, we all know the cost for international study is ridiculous. The husband may not have the luxury of waiting 1 to 3 months to get a perfect job in his field, because with the school fees, the rent, the food, the childcare costs, those are constant reminders of the need for an income. So at the end of the day, I think it's not necessarily where you start, but how you finish. So if you're starting a survival job or a job outside of your field or industry, work towards your end goal. Keep pushing, keep learning, keep growing, keep seeking the opportunities until you get where you need to be.
For sure, and again, that was my experience. So, before coming here, I was a seasoned financial institutions regulator, and in coming here, was having challenges securing a job. And luckily, I had done some network and reached out to a friend of mine and was able to get a relatively entry-level job within financial services. But I knew in my head that, hey, this was a sacrifice I had to make, and I just made up my mind that I would get into this job, shine, do great, and use that as leverage and a stepping stone to ultimately get where I need to be. And that's exactly what happened, so for sure, I definitely agree with you on that. And, as you mentioned or alluded to, having that mindset and knowing that, it's important to focus on how you finish and not necessarily how you start. That's definitely an encouraging sentiment to keep in mind, for sure. All right. So with all of that, in your experience, what are some of the biggest challenges and even mistakes made during the job search process for new immigrants?
Oh, wow. There are many. Just in general, I'll just say that there's a lot of information accessible, but I think that creates a lot of confusions and people do not know where to find good help. So I'll give my top 3 challenges and then I'll do the top 3 mistakes. In terms of challenges, one, people have difficulty entering the industry or their profession due to the lack of the Canadian experience or the relevant license or certification, as we mentioned before. I think in terms of number 2, there's a language barrier for those who are not fluent in either English or French, which are Canada's official languages. So a big thing for a lot of immigrants is having to do English as a second language training in order to, get into the place where they can communicate properly in the workplace. And number 3, I would say, is bias in the recruitment and selection process because of known or perceived ethnicity, having a native name, gender. Those things really do come into play, unfortunately. I'd say those are some of the challenges. In terms of the mistakes, one, not having a clear job search strategy, not having a clear career plan. And so what I find is that a lot of immigrants expend so much energy and effort applying to every single job posting they come across. They follow every lead that they see. And it really creates stress and it's tiresome. You spend a lot of time applying to this job, applying to that job, and then you get little to no return from it, right? Number 2, I think, is not doing proper research about their industry, the company, or the role that they're interested in. And a part of this too is not being familiar with the specific job titles or duties that are under a specific NOC code. So like you said, Paul, you had so much experience from your home country and you had a particular job title. I don't think people are mindful of the fact that it may not translate to the same thing here. And so they're seeking after which perhaps does not exist. So it's important to become familiar with the duties that match your own skill sets and what you've done in the past. And so you can look out for those jobs and the industries and the sectors that are hiring based on those particular skill sets. Number 3, I would say, is not customizing their resume to the specific job posting and including information that would further highlight their status as a newcomer or an immigrant. And I see this every day in my day-to-day job. You receive resumes and people are putting that, I'm a PR in Canada or I have an open work permit or just things like that really points out that, hey, I'm a newcomer, I have no Canadian experience. And also just, again, it's like a one-size-fits-all resume, irrespective of which role they're applying for. It's like, you get that. And no, it has to be customized. I'll just mention one other thing that I've noticed in terms of a mistake. And it's that newcomers, they take advice from way too many people who are not experts in the field or do not have the professional authority to provide guidance. I mean, when you look on LinkedIn and when you look on other social media platforms, everybody's producing content. Everybody is giving their take on what is right, what is not right. And I get it. People really do want to help and they want to share their success that they've had personally. But a lot of people have to understand that it's their own personal success, and that may not necessarily work for you. So get the advice and seek the expertise of people who actually know what they're doing.
No, that is awesome. That is awesome. And a big mention, and I think a theme that I'm hearing throughout your responses and feedback and guidance is need to have a plan, and the need to be strategic on your approach. And based on that, if you could recommend a step-by-step high-level plan for new immigrants to make a career transition here to Canada and make it as easy as possible, what would you say to them?
Yeah, I definitely have to take a strategic approach. Again, what that looks like for each individual, it will be different based on their unique needs. But as a general guide, they need to be clear on what their career goals are, what needs to be done, why it needs to be done, when it needs to be done by, and the resources that are required to get those things done. So I'm just going to give my top couple of things that I think are very essential as you create this plan. And we keep mentioning, transition plan and strategy. Literally, it's just writing down the things you need to do. It doesn't have to be a fancy this or a fancy that, but just having a clear picture of when, what, how, who, the things that I'll need to get from the starting point to the end. So as I mentioned, one, it's assessing the skills and your own interests. Know what you want to do, examine your values. What aspects of your job that you are doing or are doing do you enjoy? What skill sets, what education have you acquired? What are your key areas of success? Examine that, because that will give you some direction as to what new role you want to take on or where you want to be headed in your career. I cannot stress this enough, which is my second step, is to conduct research. Research. So labor market research is critical, looking at demographic and demand and supply information, which city, which province, which territory offers the best opportunities based on what you're searching for. How competitive would you be against other job seekers, when you look at all your experience and when you look at your own skill sets and your education, understanding the trends that are happening in your particular field or industry. Another part of it is the wage and salary information. How much will you earn in this particular field? Which province, territory, or region pays the best? What could you do to earn more money? Is it getting a license? Is it, going for higher education? So all of that research you need to be doing. Another one is personal branding. Highlighting what is unique about you. What are you good at? What are you known for? What's your core message? What's your personality like? What are your values? And then again, how is that translated on your resume? How is that translated on your social media platforms? It needs to be clear that you are this person, and it needs to be consistent. From that, I go into networking. You mentioned earlier that your wife was able to secure, to an extent, a job offer before she got here. That's the networking piece of it, forming meaningful connections and demonstrate how you can add value. What I find happening is a lot of newcomers, they'll connect with you on LinkedIn and they'll, give you the spiel, I'm so-and-so, blah, 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 I'm looking for a job opportunity. Networking is not just about asking, trying to get, but it's you creating the opportunity by solving a problem, sharing your knowledge and your expertise. You know what I mean? So I think the approach to networking is somewhat a little wrong as well. And then as a final step, I'd say get support, get a mentor, get support from reliable resources, a career coach or recruiter, non-profit organizations that I mentioned, that really support newcomers, professional associations, or experts in the profession or industry that you're interested in that will help to guide you through the transition process.
Nice. Now that was some value right there. Awesome. So before I let you go, any additional tips or words of advice for new immigrants, as well as if anyone would want to get through to either you or your company, trying to transition here, who could they and how could they reach out?
Okay. Tips or words of advice. Immigrating to Canada, like you mentioned, Paul, is a bold move, right? It's stepping away from what we're familiar with, and it's outside of our natural comfort zones. My advice would be embrace the change. Try to appreciate the differences, learn about Canada, be open-minded, and take the time to practice self-care. I honestly believe visualizing success, exercising, patience, practicing gratitude, managing your expectations for sure, and, just forging, as we mentioned before, meaningful connections, and also becoming involved in the community, I think will definitely help with the transition process. I can be reached at info@876careersolutions.com. And if you need to get in touch with my company, you can find me on social media. It's 876 Career Solutions. And if you're a newcomer and you're looking for free help, you can go to skillsforchange.org.
Nice. Hope everybody listening who needs it got that information and definitely reaches out for sure. Nadisha, thank you so much for being a guest today. I am completely blown away by your knowledge and expertise. I could and passion as well towards this. I could hear it oozing from you. And no, that is amazing. Thank you so much for being a guest today. It was an absolute pleasure.
Thank you for having me, Paul.
Awesome. All right, guys. So that's it. Thanks a million for listening. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. We'll connect again on the next episode.